crazy to see all these guys that I played juniors with doing so well now. It's awesome.
Anyone surprise you, Nick, in those days that you thought might have done well and didn't do well, or other way around?
Yeah, I mean, one guy for me that I thought was going to be horrific was Medvedev, actually.
Really?
I played him in juniors at Roehampton.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I beat him like maybe 6-3, 6-3, like, you know, I was like the dominant junior, and I was like, this guy's terrible. The worst technique I've ever seen. I was like, I honestly said, I was like, this guy should just give it up. Like, there's no way he's going to make it work with those swings. He was #1 in the world Grand Slam champion. So funny though. And he was a nutter as well. I was like, this guy's crazy.
This is quite a description for a guy that would end up being a Grand Slam champion and world #1. But I have to say that the first time I saw Medvedev play was in 2017 at the tournament of Chennai in India, and this Russian guy who was ranked world #100 reached the final where he was playing against Bautista Agut, and to be completely honest, he didn't impress me at all. The only thing I really noticed is that he moved very well for his height, but apart from that, his forehand was pretty poor for the ATP standards, his technique in general was pretty unorthodox, and I didn't see anything special in him for the 20 minutes I watched the match. Fast forward to 2024, and I have to say Daniil is one of my favorite players to watch. The guy's an absolute G outside the court as well. His interviews are something else, but watching him play is really like watching a chess master at work. The guy really knows how to expose his opponent's weaknesses. And either game-wise or physically, Medvedev always assures that playing against him is an absolute nightmare for the opponent.
It's like when someone kills you slowly, you know, and you feel it that you're dying. Not if Alcaraz kill you fast, and sometimes you don't notice. Medvedev is killing you slowly. You know, they're taking the time, enjoying the moment, and you feel that you're dying little by little, you know.
So how did this guy, that didn't seem very impressive, that people were laughing at his technique, a guy that didn't have that great of a junior career, end up becoming a Grand Slam champion, a world #1, and one of the most feared and respected opponents in the tour? That's what we're gonna take a look at in today's video, so if you enjoy it, don't forget to hit the like button, and consider subscribing to the channel to enjoy more original tennis content of this style. That's it, let's get right into the video. So when you look at the great majority of world #1s, Grand Slam champions, the great majority of them were prominent juniors, and their success was quite predictable since a young age. However, with Medvedev this wasn't the case, and he had a solid junior career but nothing special. His career high as a junior was number 13, and his best result at a junior Grand Slam was round 3. In 2014, at age 18, is where Medvedev would start playing futures events and picking up ATP points. He started that season with 0 ATP points and would end up as world number 646, picking up a futures title on the way. 2015 would see Daniil progress, but like I mentioned before, not at the speed of other star players. Daniil won a couple of futures events, and he played his first qualifying draw for an ATP event at Gstaad, where he was one match away from classifying, and he ended up the season as world number 336. And in 2016, Daniil would play his last futures events at the beginning of the season and make the transition to the challengers and ATP events. And these were his goals for that year and his future.
This year, let's say if I play all the Grand Slam qualies, for example, and maybe getting main draws through qualies somewhere will be perfect for me. And then just to grow my ranking. And at the future, it's like everyone, to be top 10 or something like this. I don't say #1, but top 10 will be good.
#1, because it's a very tough spot at the moment,
yeah.
Maybe.
I said that if I make top 10, I will be not sad. So if I make #1, it will be the most unbelievable thing in my life.
Did he just say #1 in the world? Yeah, keep dreaming, Daniil. Anyways, it was this season in 2016 where Medvedev would consistently get over these qualifying draws of ATP events. His first ATP win came on the grass of Hertogenbosch against Ceballos. Unfortunately, at the qualifying draw of Wimbledon, he would have to face the GOAT himself, Marcus Willis, and he lost that match in 4 sets, one match away from playing his first Grand Slam. But after some very consistent results at the Challenger Tour, Medvedev ended up 2016 as world number 104. So at almost age 21, Medvedev wasn't even ranked inside the top 100, and his progression in the last couple of years was solid, but not exceptional. You wouldn't say this is a guy that will end up as a top 10 or top 5. 2017 would be the season where Medvedev would establish himself as an ATP player. He started his season with the first ATP final, like I mentioned before, at Chennai against Bautista Agut, a massive tournament for him, as he would jump to world number 63, a ranking good enough to play pretty much at any ATP event. And some weeks after that is where Medvedev would have his crazy experience with Djokovic that he's explained a couple of times, where they were both training at Monte Carlo, and he ended up in a private jet with Djokovic, where they would both go together to Serbia, where they would actually face each other at the Davis Cup. And against all odds, Medvedev took the first set from Novak Djokovic, but playing at what was a new level of intensity for him, he started cramping at the third set and had to retire from the match. However, a match that would give Medvedev a huge boost of confidence, going toe-to-toe with the back then world number 2. And Medvedev's best win of the season came at Wimbledon, where he defeated the world number 3 Stan Wawrinka. A big upset, as Wawrinka came from playing a great French Open and making the final. And a win that would make a lot of people hear the name Daniil Medvedev for the first time. Medvedev ended up the season as world number 65. Not a huge jump in the rankings, but a life-changing season in terms of finances, earning 5 times more prize money than the season before. That's how much difference there is between playing challengers and ATP events. And in 2018 is where the name Daniil Medvedev would really become a name that you didn't want to see in your draw, because in 2017 pick up his level again, making the 3rd round at Wimbledon, and after that came a very good US Open swing, where he won his 2nd ATP title at Winston-Salem, and at the US Open he would defeat the world number 15 Stefanos Tsitsipas, who despite his young age at the time, he was one of the favorites to do very well at the US Open. Some weeks later came the biggest title of Daniil's career so far, as coming through the qualifying draw, Medvedev would surprise everyone and defeated the home favorite Nishikori to get his hands on his first ATP 500 title. Now he was really making a name for himself as one of the most solid players in the tour, a guy that barely missed from any wing, a guy that is almost 2 meters tall and is one of the best movers in the tour, and a guy that is not afraid of facing anyone, because in that final against Nishikori he came out as a big underdog, with the whole crowd of course cheering for the local, and Medvedev dominated the Japanese player in quite stunning fashion. The next week at Shanghai, Medvedev would face world number 2 Roger Federer, and the match was an absolute battle, with Medvedev taking Federer to a decider, which the Swiss would end up taking by 6-4, but again Medvedev was proving to be a very tough guy to crack, and Medvedev ended up the season as world number 17, and having a progress that had the ATP Tour taking notes. And here came 2019, and although Medvedev's progress in 2018 was massive, he wasn't one of those names that people were talking about the most. At this time, names like Zverev or Tsitsipas were much more talked about, and Medvedev was kind of in the shadow. Nobody was expecting huge things from him, but already at the start of the season, the signs that Medvedev was becoming an amazing player were there. He made the final at Brisbane in the first tournament of the year, and then at the Australian Open, he had a super physical battle with Novak Djokovic in the 4th round. A battle that he lost in 4 sets, but he made the world number 1 really dig deep to win the match. After this, he won another title at Sofia, and what is very surprising is that Medvedev would have 2 very good results on the clay. The first one, he defeated both Tsitsipas and Djokovic to make the semis in Monte Carlo, and he then made the final in Barcelona, defeating Nishikori in the semi-finals. He didn't win a single match on the clay after that, but those 2 results are quite surprising to see. On the grass, he made the semis at Queen's, and he lost a 5-set battle against David Goffin at Wimbledon. I do remember watching that match, and it was a super high quality encounter. But here came the months that would change Daniil's career forever. The US Open swing. The year prior, he played great in these courts, but what Daniil did in 2019 in these courts would shock absolutely everyone. His first tournament, final at Washington, losing against a great version of Nick Kyrgios. First Masters 1000 final at Montreal, where he would lose convincingly to Rafael Nadal, but nonetheless a huge tournament for him. Champion at Cincinnati, beating Novak Djokovic in the semi-finals, proving that it wasn't a coincidence that he beat him at Monte Carlo. Now he beat him on a hard court, which is even tougher, and his level was becoming absolutely scary. He beat David Goffin in the final, clinching his first Masters 1000 title, rising to number 5 in the world, and coming to the US Open as one of the favorites to win the tournament, something that no one would have imagined 1 year before. Like I said, he wasn't a name that everybody was talking about. He was pretty much in the shadow even if he had a high ranking. Now he was a reality. His name hadn't been hyped, but at this time he was possibly the most informed player of all. Now when players faced him, they surely had the feeling that they were going against a heavyweight of the sport. At the US Open came his magical run, where he had his up and downs with the crowd, letting people know he had no problem playing the role of the villain, but he showed incredible mental strength in many of his matches, incredible endurance, and beating Wawrinka in the quarters and Dimitrov in the semi-finals, he would classify for his first Grand Slam final, the 4th tournament in a row where he reaches the final. And in this occasion, his finals opponent would be again Rafael Nadal, the man who had just destroyed him weeks before at Montreal. And as it happened in Montreal, Nadal started kicking Daniil's ass, putting himself 2 sets to love and a breakup, proving to be a very tough matchup for Daniil. But the Russian was not gonna give up, and as the match went on, the conditions got slower and slower, which made Nadal's topspin forehand bounce lower, and now Daniil was going toe-to-toe in these rallies. The match ended up being an absolute thriller, and Nadal, who played a fantastic 5th set, would end up winning 6-4 in the deciding set. A very tough loss for Daniil, who fought incredibly hard in this match and got so close to his first Grand Slam title, just to lose in the final set. Would he get demoralized after this? Absolutely not. And Medvedev won the next tournament he played at St. Petersburg in dominant fashion without dropping a single set. He then won his second Masters 1000 title at Shanghai, again without dropping a single set, and that would make 6 consecutive tournaments where Daniil reached at least the final, an incredible streak that would make him rise to world number 4. His end to the season was quite a heartbreaking one, because he lost to Rafael Nadal at the Nitto ATP Finals, being 5-1 up and match point, and Daniil somehow lost the match, getting eliminated from the Nitto ATP Finals. But although he had a quite heartbreaking end to his 2019 season, for the first time in his career, Daniil had super high expectations on him at the start of the season. And 2020 was a complicated year for everyone, but in the little tennis that was played, he proved that 2019 wasn't a coincidence. He made the semis at the US Open, where he would lose to the eventual champion Dominic Thiem, and he ended the year winning the Masters 1000 of Paris and the Nitto ATP Finals. Daniil just had these periods in the year of extreme confidence, where he was almost unbeatable. Not even the top 3 players in the world could stop him this tournament. So after that amazing end to 2020, he came to the 2021 Australian Open as possibly the second favourite. And the 2 favourites, Djokovic and Medvedev, did reach the final. The 8th-time champion against the Russian machine who is on a 20-match win streak. Surprisingly, the match was pretty one-sided, and Djokovic played a pretty much flawless match, showing that extra experience in the few key moments of the match and putting on a tennis clinic to win in straight sets. Throughout the majority of the season, Daniil was ranked world number 2, and apart from the clay, his results were very consistent. Again, at the US Open swing is where he would play his best tennis, winning his 4th Masters 1000 title at Toronto and coming to the US Open as the second favourite. The first favourite was Novak Djokovic, who had won the first 3 Grand Slams of the year and was searching for the calendar slam in this tournament. Again, the dream final was set, Djokovic against Medvedev, a Djokovic that was 1 match away from doing history. He was searching to be the first man since Rod Laver to win the calendar slam. The amount of pressure on the Serb was absolutely massive, as it wasn't only about this achievement, but the big 3 at this point had 20 Grand Slams each. And if Djokovic was to win the match, he would of course break this tie and put himself on the lead of this race for the first time in his career, after being his whole career way behind Federer and Nadal. And for the first time, the pressure was too much for Djokovic, and a Medvedev that would play an extremely solid match would outplay Djokovic in straight sets, clinching his first Grand Slam title and now coming very close to the number 1 spot. For the next 6 to 12 months, the biggest narrative in tennis, apart from the Grand Slam race between the big three, was who was the best tennis player in the world, Novak Djokovic or Daniil Medvedev. At the Australian Open of 2022, the Serb was deported from Australia, and it was a pretty big chance for Daniil to win the tournament and put himself for the first time as world number 1. A Daniil that was in great form would reach the final, but instead of playing Novak Djokovic, he would play Rafael Nadal. And a Nadal that had been many months out of the tour was the underdog in this match. And I'm pretty sure we all remember what happened. Nadal delivered one of the greatest comebacks in tennis history when he looked down and out 2 sets to love down and looking already tired in the 3rd set, delivering the most heartbreaking loss in Daniil's career, a Daniil that was trying to become the best player in the world, and somehow his 2nd Grand Slam title just slipped off his fingers. Some weeks later, at Acapulco, making the semi-finals, Daniil would reach the number 1 spot for the first time in his career. But even though it was a massive achievement, the feeling at this point wasn't the best. It was difficult to recognize him as the best player in the world when he had just lost that final against Nadal, and he lost to him again at Acapulco. And that loss at the Australian Open did have an effect on Daniil, who ended 2022 as the world number 5 for the first time, taking a step backwards in his career. Then, in 2023, he would recompose and go on another massive streak of confident wins at the beginning of the year, making 5 straight finals and winning 4 of those. And for the first time in his career, he would play great on the clay throughout the whole clay season, catching a Masters 1000 title at Rome and having a great 2023 season where he would make the US Open finals and finish as world number 3. And although the end of his 2024 Australian Open campaign was very heartbreaking, as he said, it's never easy to lose in a final, he's proved again throughout this tournament that he's an absolute warrior and that we have a lot of Daniil Medvedev to see in upcoming years. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, the story of someone who had all the odds against him, to the point that people were laughing at his technique. But with hard work, perseverance, and incredible consistent progress, he became one of the best and most respected players in the world. So, if you did enjoy the video, don't forget to hit the like button. Let me know in the comments, how many Grand Slams do you think Daniil Medvedev will win in his career? I'm curious to see. All of this said, I hope I can see you all in my next video. Peace!